So if an alien were, trying to understand what it actually means to be a human being, they probably wouldn't look at your wedding day.
Right. They wouldn't care about that.
No, exactly. They wouldn't analyze your big career milestones or your cross-country moves or any of those sweeping dramatic arcs.
I mean, that's just the highlight reel.
Exactly. They would look at the 15 minutes right after your alarm goes off on like a random Tuesday. And today, we are diving deep into the human operating system using the most unlikely tool imaginable.
It really is unexpected.
It is. We're looking at an English language lesson for absolute beginners. We're taking a stack of sources centered around a seemingly simple script, and we're going to decode the literal architecture of a human day.
Which is honestly the perfect Trojan horse for understanding behavior.
Yeah, how so?
Well, because when you strip away the nuance and, the complexity of native fluency, you are forced to look at the raw structural skeleton of how we organize our existence.
That makes total sense. And the specific source we are tearing into today is a complete script from a platform called Emma's English Channel.
Right, the A1 learner script.
Yeah, it's an interaction between two characters, Emma and Leo. And it's built explicitly for A1 learners, so people at the very foundational level of learning English. Their stated goal is to teach you how to describe your daily life using common action verbs.
But what they actually produced is, well, it's a mirror reflecting our deepest, most ingrained daily habits.
Yeah, and to match the spirit of that source material, we're going to take a slightly different approach today. We're going to intentionally maintain a really accessible, engaging pace.
I like that.
Yeah, we are going to explicitly highlight those common action verbs as they appear. And later on, we're going to focus heavily on the single expressions we use to describe evening relaxation.
Because that's universally relevant.
Completely. Whether you are an English learner yourself or you just want to understand why your day feels the way it does, these foundational verbs are the building blocks of reality.
And, the transition in this text from morning to night is fascinating. It perfectly mirrors a linguistic progression.
Oh, wait, really? In what way?
Well, the day starts with very simple, physical, almost primal verbs, and then it slowly evolves into much more complex, abstract, and mental verbs by the afternoon.
I love that. Let's test that theory right out of the gate. So we're looking at the very first micro-interaction of the day. Emma welcomes everyone, Leo says hello, and Emma asks, what is the first thing you do in the morning?
A classic icebreaker.
Right. And Leo says, well, I wake up at 7:30 a.m., but I don't get up immediately. I stay in bed for 10 minutes. Emma laughs and replies, me too. I wake up at 6:30 a.m., but I get out of bed at 6:45 a.m.
Okay, stop right there. Because the creators of this lesson are making a very deliberate, critical linguistic distinction in the very first substantive exchange.
You mean separating the two verbs?
Yes.
Okay.
They are actively separating the phrasal verbs wake up and get up.
Right.
The text explicitly defines wake up as to stop sleeping and get up as the physical act of moving your body out of the bed.
I'll be honest, my personal buffer period is rarely 10 minutes. If my phone is within arm's reach and I haven't thrown it across the room the night before, I will lie there and scroll for 45 minutes before I actually get up.
I think we're all guilty of that.
It's a terrible habit. But why do you think a beginner's language lesson is taking the time to map out this specific delay? I mean, why not just teach, I start my day at 7 a.m.?
Because saying I start my day at 7 a.m. is a robotic lie for most people.
Fair point.
The curriculum designers are tapping into the neuroscience of sleep inertia. When your alarm goes off, your brain is transitioning from deep delta waves to the alpha and beta waves of waking consciousness.
And that takes a minute.
Exactly. That transition isn't instantaneous. You have a biological delay, a grogginess where you are conscious, but your motor functions and executive decision-making aren't fully online. By separating wake up from get up, the text validates this universal human experience.
So it's really about giving them the vocabulary to describe their actual reality, not some idealized, perfect version of it.
Yes, exactly. It takes a purely grammatical lesson about phrasal verbs and makes it instantly relatable.
Right.
The learner isn't just memorizing vocabulary. They are recognizing their own morning hesitation. It builds immediate trust with the material.
It reminds me of the underlying mechanism of booting up a computer.
Oh, how so?
Well, when you press the power button, that is wake up, the hardware receives power, the screen illuminates.
Right, the lights are on.
But if you try to open an application in that first 10 seconds, nothing happens. You have to wait for the operating system to load all its background processes into the RAM.
That's actually a really good way to look at it.
Right. That 10 or 15 minutes Emma and Leo spend in bed, that is the human operating system Loading into the RAM, you are powered on, but you aren't functional yet.
That's a strong mechanical analogy. The cognitive transition from unconsciousness to active physical movement requires that buffer. And once the brain has cleared that sleep inertia, we shift from the mental state of waking to the physical demands of preparing the body.
Which brings us to the bathroom and the kitchen. The sheer density of action verbs here is amazing.
It really ramps up.
Yeah, Leo says, after I get out of bed, I go to the bathroom, I brush my teeth and wash my face. Emma says she goes to the kitchen to make coffee.
The essentials.
Always. Then Leo says he makes breakfast, usually eggs and toast. Emma counters that she eats yogurt and fruit because it's fast. Finally, Emma says, then I get dressed. I put on my work clothes.
We are looking at a cluster of incredibly high utility verbs here. Brush, wash, make, get.
Very hands-on words.
Exactly. In language acquisition theory, particularly in a method called total physical response, tying vocabulary to highly tactile physical movements is the fastest way to cement it in the memory.
Oh, like learning by doing.
Yes, you can mime brushing, washing, making, and dressing.
It's muscle memory. If you physically brush your teeth every single morning while consciously thinking the English verb brush, you are physically encoding the language right into your routine.
You are, but, let's look past the linguistics to the sociology embedded here.
Okay, sociology. Where do you see that?
The text uses these basic verbs to contrast two entirely different modern lifestyles.
Oh, you mean Emma's speed versus Leo's slow morning?
Precisely. Emma explicitly states she eats yogurt and fruit because it is fast. She drinks coffee for the immediate chemical acceleration.
Yeah, it's optimizing.
Right. She represents a highly optimized, utility-driven approach to the morning. Leo, conversely, boils water for tea, he cooks eggs, he toasts bread.
A much more involved process.
He is allocating a significant portion of his morning to the deliberate, slower process of preparation. So the A1 text is subtly offering the learner the vocabulary to describe their specific socioeconomic reality.
Like, are you rushed, or do you have the luxury of time?
Exactly.
I do want to push back on one part of their routine, though.
Oh, which part?
Emma says, I get dressed, I put on my work clothes. Is this actually a universal transition anymore?
Ah, I see where you're going.
Yeah, I mean, post-2020, with millions of people working from home in sweatpants, doesn't teaching an A1 learner about putting on work clothes feel a bit outdated? Are we teaching them a version of reality that doesn't exist for a massive chunk of the population?
That's a very fair critique of modern work culture. But psychologically, the text is still dead on.
Really? How?
It comes down to a concept called enclothed cognition.
Enclothed cognition. I haven't heard that term.
It's the psychological theory that the clothes a person wears actually trigger distinct changes in their cognitive processes and even their physiological state.
Wait, really? Just the clothes?
Yes. Studies show that when people put on a doctor's coat, their attention to detail literally increases. When people put on formal business attire, their abstract thinking and negotiation skills measure higher than when they are in casual clothes.
Wait, so just the physical act of changing fabrics changes how your brain processes information?
It does, because clothes carry symbolic meaning. The pajamas represent the private, relaxed self. The work clothes, even if those work clothes are just a slightly nicer pair of sweatpants for a Zoom call, represent the public professional self.
That makes a lot of sense.
So by explicitly teaching the phrase, put on my work clothes, the curriculum is teaching the transition of identity. You are using a physical action verb to describe a profound cognitive shift.
Okay, I buy that.
Yeah.
It's the physical trigger for the mental shift.
Yeah.
And speaking of physical transitions, once you are fueled and dressed in whatever your work clothes happen to be, you have to leave the house.
Time for the commute.
The great spatial negotiation of the human day.
That's one way to put it.
The text sets this up with a stark contrast. Leo says, after breakfast, I leave the house. Emma chimes in, I walk to work because my office is near my house. It takes 15 minutes.
Must be nice.
Right. But Leo says, I take the bus. It is usually crowded. I listen to music on the bus. Later on, in the vocabulary spotlight, the text explicitly defines commute as to travel to work by bus, car, or train.
Notice how the physical environment completely dictates the verb structure they are forced to use.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Emma uses an active, autonomous verb. I walk. She is the engine of her own mobility.
She controls her 15-minute destiny. If she wants to walk faster, she walks faster.
Exactly, because her geographical proximity to her office affords her that autonomy. Leo, however, uses the structure of passive surrender. I take the bus.
He isn't moving himself. He is being moved.
And look at the immediate consequence of that loss of autonomy. The text adds the detail. It is usually crowded.
Worst.
He is subjected to a shared public space where he has zero control over his physical boundaries or his speed. This is a very stressful, high cognitive load environment.
Which explains his next action perfectly. I listen to music.
It's an auditory boundary.
It really is. Think about any crowded subway or bus in any major city on Earth. It's just a sea of people wearing noise-canceling headphones.
I do it every day.
Same. It is the universal unspoken signal for my physical body is trapped in this public space, but I am retreating into a private acoustic bubble. It's a defense mechanism.
And it's brilliant that this beginner's lesson includes it. It teaches the learner not just how to say bus, but how to describe the psychological coping mechanisms required to navigate urban transit.
But eventually, the transit ends. They arrive at the office. And this is where the entire linguistic landscape of the source text shifts completely. The physical verbs we've been tracking, they almost entirely vanish.
They evaporate the moment the workday begins.
Yeah, Emma describes her workday like this. I sit at my desk. I use my computer all day. Leo asks what she does on it, and she says, I read emails and I write reports. Sometimes I have meetings with my boss.
Right.
And Leo chimes in, I answer phone calls and talk to customers.
This is a profound pivot. Think back to the morning. The verbs were intensely physical and survival-based. Wake, get up, wash, brush, make, eat, dress, walk.
Very active.
Right. Now the body is completely immobilized. Emma literally states, I sit at my desk. The human organism has been parked. And suddenly, the verbs become entirely mental, communicative, and abstract.
Read. Write. Have meetings. Answer. Talk.
We have transitioned from a biological entity maintaining itself to an intellectual entity processing data. The text is perfectly mirroring the reality of the modern knowledge worker economy.
So true.
Teaching these specific verbs equips the beginner to describe intellectual labor, which is incredibly difficult to mime or point to. You can point to someone washing, but how do you visually demonstrate the internal cognitive process of reading or writing a report?
You really can. It requires a massive leap in language comprehension. But right in the middle of this abstract mental heavy lifting, they hit 1:0 p.m. They have lunch.
Ah, the midday break.
Right. And the text defines have lunch simply as to eat a meal. But again, the context they build around this simple phrase is doing so much heavy lifting.
It becomes a lesson in sociology and class dynamics.
Exactly. Leo says he usually has a sandwich or a salad, and sometimes I go to a cafe with friends. Emma says she loves cafes, but she usually brings lunch from home to save money. She adds, I eat in the park if the weather is nice.
The curriculum designers are using the midday meal to teach motivations, not just actions.
Right.
Leo's lunch is consumer-driven and highly social. Going to a cafe requires disposable income and a desire to expend social energy during a break.
Whereas Emma explicitly states her motivation to save money. That one phrase, to save money, unlocks a huge level of expressive power for a beginner.
It allows the learner to explain why they are doing something. Emma's lunch is solitary, economically driven, and she seeks out nature as a refuge from the office.
The park picnic.
Exactly. It contrasts the extroverted consumer lunch with the introverted frugal lunch. It proves that even at the A1 level, language isn't just about labeling objects, it's about explaining your values.
And after that break, the mental exertion resumes until they hit the 5:00 p.m. mark. Which brings us to the great shedding of the workday.
The transition from the public sphere back to the private.
Leo says, I finish work at 5:00 p.m. I am usually very tired. Emma agrees, me too. After work, I go home. And then Emma shares a detail that I think transcends all language barriers.
What's that?
She says, the first thing I do is change my clothes. I put on comfortable pajamas. And Leo laughs and says, that is the best feeling.
We were talking earlier about enclothed cognition, how putting on work clothes changes your mental state to be more focused and professional.
Right, the armor going on.
This is that exact same psychological mechanism operating in reverse. Taking off the work clothes and putting on the pajamas is the physical trigger that commands the brain to downregulate.
Ah, I love that.
The nervous system gets the signal, the public performance is over, the threat level has decreased, you can return to baseline.
It's the visual and tactile cue that you are allowed to be tired now, like an astronaut taking off a spacesuit.
That's a great image.
And I am usually very tired, is stated as an absolute, unavoidable consequence of the workday.
But notice that the relaxation doesn't happen instantly. Just like there was a buffer period in the morning before getting out of bed, there is a buffer period in the evening before true rest.
Oh, right.
the survival maintenance still has to happen.
The chores. The text outlines this meticulously. Leo says, sometimes I go to the gym after work, but only on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which is a great way to teach specific days of the week, but it also teaches the concept of a rigid, scheduled routine.
And Emma handles the domestic maintenance. I usually go to the supermarket to buy food for dinner. I like to cook pasta or chicken with rice. I wash the dishes every night.
Every night. The relentless nature of basic survival verbs, buy, cook, wash, you really can't escape them.
No, you can't. And only after those maintenance verbs are satisfied does the text finally transition to the reward phase.
The deeply personal evening downtime.
Yes.
And this is where we really want to slow down and focus, as we promised at the start of our deep dive. How do we practice and articulate simple expressions for evening relaxation? The source text tackles this head on.
The vocabulary spotlight at the end defines the core concept perfectly. It says, relax means to rest and be calm.
But the way Emma and Leo achieve that calm couldn't be more different. Emma says, I relax on the sofa, I watch TV or a movie. She also adds, sometimes I call my family and we talk about our day.
Very typical.
Yeah. Leo, however, says, I don't watch much TV. I prefer to read a book or listen to a podcast in English.
This is a brilliant exploration of how diverse human decompression strategies are. Emma's relaxation verbs are watch and call. She is choosing passive, visual entertainment and active social externalization.
She needs to talk out her day to process it.
Exactly.
She wants to be entertained without having to think too hard, or she wants to connect emotionally.
But Leo's verbs are read and listen. His relaxation is highly solitary, but cognitively active.
That's the part that trips me up a bit. I mean, he is listening to an English lesson, a second language, to relax.
Yeah.
How is focused cognitive effort supposed to be relaxing when the whole point of the evening is that they're very tired from using their brains all day?
It seems counterintuitive, I know, but it aligns perfectly with the psychological concept of flow state.
Flow state.
Yeah, for some people, relaxing doesn't mean turning the brain off. Letting the mind idle can actually lead to rumination or anxiety about the workday.
Oh, totally. I get that.
Right. So instead, they find calm by directing their cognitive focus toward a structured, controllable challenge like decoding a new language or following a complex narrative in a book. The control is what creates the calm, not the absence of effort.
And that makes so much sense. It's the difference between zoning out and zoning in. The text is giving the beginner the verbs to identify their own psychological profile. Are you a watch and call person or a read and listen person?
It forces the learner to actively choose the verbs that represent their identity.
So as you are listening to this audio deep dive right now, which verbs define your evening? When you finally get the dishes washed and you sit down, what is your action verb? Do you seek out the glow of a TV to watch or the voice of a family member to call? Or do you put on headphones to listen and open a book to read?
It's a great question to ask yourself.
Yeah, practicing these simple expressions isn't just about learning English. It's about articulating what your mind needs to recover.
And eventually, regardless of the method of recovery, the biology demands a hard reset.
The battery hits zero. We reach the end of the script and the end of the day. Leo asks, finally, the day ends. What do you do before you go to bed?
The final routine.
Emma says, I take a shower and I brush my teeth again. I check my alarm for the next morning. Leo says, I usually go to bed at 11:00 p.m. I turn off the lights and sleep very well.
The symmetry here is beautiful. Emma brushes her teeth again. It creates a closed loop, echoing the very first section of the text.
And checking the alarm. That's setting the trap for the next day. It guarantees that the entire cycle, the waking up, the groggy 10-minute buffer, the washing, the commute, is locked in to repeat.
The vocabulary spotlight defines go to bed simply as to go to sleep at night. It is the cessation of all action verbs.
The system powers down.
But, what is truly fascinating about this source text isn't just the script itself. At the very end of the document, the creators included a section called Key Tips for the Creator.
Oh, yes. The stage directions for how to actually perform this lesson.
These tips reveal the mechanical engineering behind language instruction. The first instruction dictates the pacing. It says, speak at about 120 words per minute. This allows beginners to process each word.
Let's talk about that. 120 words per minute is a very deliberate speed. It's not agonizingly slow, but it's definitely not the rapid-fire, slurred cadence that native speakers use when we're just chatting.
Right. It is scientifically calibrated to manage cognitive load.
How so?
Well, when you listen to your native language, you aren't processing individual words. You are processing chunks of meaning. But a beginner hears a foreign language as an unbroken wall of sound. They can't find the boundaries where one word ends and the next begins.
It's just a blur.
Exactly. By strictly adhering to 120 words per minute, the creator is artificially injecting auditory white space between the words.
So it gives their brain the literal milliseconds required to say, okay, that was a word. I need to access my memory bank, retrieve the translation, and comprehend it before the next sound hits my ear.
Exactly. It prevents cognitive overload. The second tip is equally crucial. It emphasizes enunciation, explicitly instructing the host to clearly pronounce the endings of verbs, like the S in washes or the ed in dressed.
Why is the ending of the verb the most important part to emphasize?
Because English is a heavily inflected language at the ends of words, the suffix carries the temporal and grammatical context.
Give me an example.
Okay, if you say wash, it's a command or a base action. If you say washes, the S tells the listener we are in the present tense, third person. The ed in dressed instantly teleports the sentence into the past tense.
Where
Native speakers drop these endings constantly in casual speech. We mumble them.
we just let the word trail off.
And when you do that to a beginner, you strip away their grammatical roadmap. They might know what dress means, but they have no idea when it happened. Enunciating the endings provides clarity of time and subject.
And the final tip brings it all together visually. If this is for YouTube, display the verbs on the screen as the hosts say them.
This is the pinnacle of multimodal learning theory.
Multimodal learning.
Yeah. When a learner hears the word relax, spoken at a deliberate 120 words per minute, clearly enunciated, and simultaneously sees the letters RELAX appear on a screen, the brain creates a dual encoding of the data.
Oh, wow.
The auditory cortex and the visual cortex are stimulated simultaneously, reinforcing each other. It exponentially increases the likelihood of moving that word from short-term working memory into long-term storage.
It transforms a simple conversation into a highly engineered neurological event. And that brings us full circle on our journey today. We started with the very first groggy moments of waking up and tracked this A1 English script all the way to turning off the lights.
We've dissected the biological buffer of getting out of bed, the enclothed cognition of work clothes, the psychological defense mechanisms of a crowded commute, and the stark pivot from physical survival verbs to the abstract mental verbs of the office.
And we spent crucial time practicing and understanding the simple expressions we use for evening relaxation, the profound difference between finding calm through watching and calling versus reading and listening.
Ultimately, while this text is a tool built for absolute beginners to learn English, it acts as a diagnostic tool for all of us. These simple action verbs, wake, wash, make, walk, sit, watch, sleep, are the literal scaffolding of our reality.
They really are the architecture of our days. Whether you are an English learner practicing the pronunciation of brush or a native speaker trying to figure out why your commute drains you, these verbs hold the answers. So before we completely wrap up this exploration, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to carry with you. We've mapped out the routines of Emma and Leo in granular detail, but let's look at yours. If you had to write down just 5 simple foundational action verbs that would define your absolute perfect day, what would they be? Would they be active verbs, social verbs, verbs of deep rest? Think about those 5 perfect words, and then ask yourself the hard question. Do the verbs you wrote down match the action verbs you actually live today? Think about that as you transition into your next routine. Keep analyzing the words that build your world.